Welcome again to Living in the 21st Century. Joining me today is Jim Wallace from GOAL, that's Gun Owners Action League in Massachusetts. Jim, it's a pleasure having you on again. We always, from time to time, speak on the gun violence here in Massachusetts. Sometimes I wonder if people is paying more closer attention to the guns opposed to the people who use the guns. I thought during the coronavirus session that the gun violence had went down, but apparently even though there were fewer outbursts of gun violence, the more people got shot within those fewer events. So tell me what's going on, because you wrote an article, Massachusetts is willfully blind to mass murder and suicide. Elaborate on that.
Yeah, it's something that we've been pushing for quite a long time, and I'm not sure why, but the Massachusetts legislature and the anti-Second Amendment community just wants nothing to do with the real answers. I mean, if you go back really to Columbine, and certainly to Newtown in Connecticut, the obvious common denominator is not the thing they used. It's severe untreated mental health.
Yes.
And the problem is every time we try to bring this up, the folks who want more gun control continue to say, no, it has to be the guns. You're just trying to change the subject. Well, we are trying to change the subject because we want the problem to be solved.
Yes.
And, more and more restrictions on lawful people are not going to solve a severe mental health problem. And that's what we're facing here in this country. Even in Massachusetts, as okay as mental health care is, it's way below what it should be. And these folks, it always happens after every major mass shooting or mass murder. People come out and say, oh, I knew something was going to go wrong. I've known about them for years or known them for years. And, there was really a lot of things that they needed help with, but never got help. And we've seen that time and time again. So I don't understand why they refuse to want to have this conversation.
Yes, I often wonder, and I just want to put guns on one side for 1 second, because guns are just the equipment. But we, the human beings, has to establish a sense of when and how to use these guns and firearms appropriately, not endanger oneself. And I often wonder when someone takes up a gun and commit mass murders. There are often some nice kid who was silent in his home, who never had a record for doing anything wrong, but at school there are these withdrawn symptoms. He probably was bullied. And I think that in schools, preferably, I think teachers have to pay attention, critical attention to some of those students who are getting bullied and who are withdrawn from the classroom, even though they are there, and start to figure out what's going on in their mind. Now, I'm not saying that they are psychologists, but I think if a teacher can witness a child is getting bullied, that there should be some program at school to lecture children on how to manage that sensitivity when it comes to bullying. There should be classes established to reduce bullying. But unfortunately, even if it is reduced in the classroom, people get on the internet, on Facebook and whatever social media they can get on and establish that bully pattern. And someone's going to get it up there. It's going to trigger something up there. And they're going back to school and they're going to gun down everyone who is in sight. And you are right. I believe that mental health is a serious issue. And I think there are some symptoms that are right there before our very eyes that we are often ignoring until something outbursts and happens. what would you recommend in this case to those who go along silent, calm, who may very well have this mind of going out there and gunning down students? What best approach do you go about dealing with that?
Well, we had an historical opportunity when the state passed the red flag bill just a few years ago. And the premise of the red flag bill, it was pushed right after the Parkland massacre. And basically it was a system that allowed anybody, didn't matter who it was, to go to a court and file a petition that they were afraid that you were either a danger to yourself or others. And we really didn't need that bill here because the police chiefs have enormous authority, which we've always fought about, but they have it. There was no need to pass it, but we knew what was going to pass. And as a result, we said, here we have an historic opportunity to talk about suicide and severe mental health that causes these mass murders. And we had several mental health amendments lined up. Other legislators did too. And the night of the debates, in the House on the red flag bill, the chairman got up and said all of a sudden that all amendments dealing with mental health were going to be ruled beyond the scope, which means they won't take them up. And he's clearly said this is a gun licensing bill, not a mental health bill. Okay. We're talking about people who are potentially suicidal, and we're talking about people who are so severely mentally ill, they may be the next mass murderer. But we're not going to talk about mental health. You serious? Mm-hmm. And that's what they did. They absolutely threw away an historic opportunity. Even something as simple as we tried to form a commission that would at least tell us what the needs are for mental health in Massachusetts. And they refused to even acknowledge the amendment. So they threw it away. And obviously the red flag bill was not about helping people. It was about just passing another gun law. So it's also interesting what you say about in schools. And if you look, other than Columbine, since then, if you actually look at the age of the young men that are doing this, they're just out of high school. And a good friend of mine actually said it's probably because during school, as poor as the help was, they were in the system and they were at least acknowledged and getting some form of help or care. Once they graduate, they're out of the system and they have nobody. They have nothing. And they sit in their homes and they stew and they blame the world and their mental health gets worse. And, we just saw in the last year, COVID, oh my goodness, suicides went through the roof. Mm-hmm. And in Massachusetts, suicide by hanging is more than guns, drugs, and poisons combined. Yes. So again, they had a historical opportunity to address this stuff and just chose to come after us again.
That's true. One thing I would love to ask here again is, we find that is within a certain age group that consistently carrying out these mass murders. Mm-hmm. And if we can't deal with it from a mental standpoint, could we deal with it from a managerial standpoint? And what I mean by that, if we recognize that, and this is not to infringe on reducing gun sales or hinder any retail outlet who sells guns or anything like that. It's all about managing how the gun is utilized by young people who are within that age group. So for example, I want to buy a gun for my child and to take him hunting. That's good, that's fine. Buy the guns, whatever you want to do. But after the hunting process is over, I think that parent should take that gun and lock it in a safe until they are ready to go and do the same thing all over again. Now, it's hard to put it that way because at the age of 21, you are considered a man or a woman in the purest form. You can make total decisions on your own. So why do I want a parent or a senior person telling me how I should and shouldn't use the gun. And I believe that because of that, and there's nothing wrong with passing a law to make that clear. Look, we don't want to stop you from buying your guns or using your guns, but it is a clear fact that people within the age group of 1 to 25 years old are gunning down people senselessly. So I only think it's fair that until you get over that threshold of 25 years, then your level of maturity should be at a point where you can manage weapons in a very careful manner. Not that they can't do it under that age, but I just think it may be the most sensiblest thing to do. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, other than the Second Amendment debate, the civil rights debate, this is an interesting conversation that's happening nationwide. That the courts have ruled the high courts have ruled you cannot punish somebody. I think they said 25 and under, like you would somebody whose mind is fully matured. But at the same time, pretty much the same people who celebrated that decision are also really pushing to get the voting age down to 16. So, you try to rationalize how you can go in both directions at the same time, and it just doesn't work. The other thing, too, is the fact that, regardless of what age the person is, it's still a very small, minute number. And if we were able to actually address them early and catch their problems early. Now, we're talking a difference between, street violence and what we're facing here. Right. As horrific as these things are, there's still a very small number of people that are doing them. I mean, in our recent history, maybe 20, which is too many. But if we were doing our job as a society and treating them, I'll give you a great example. During the red flag debate, I argued that, okay, you've taken somebody to court, you've identified them, and the judge agrees that this person may likely be the next mass murderer. So you've taken them to court, you've aggravated them, you've taken their guns away, and you send them home? Really? And I asked point blank, okay, can they be a doctor? Can they continue to work in a school? Can they drive a tanker truck? And you know what I was told? Well, you can't take away their right to earn a living. You just told me this person is the next mass murderer. And your answer is just take their legal gun away and send them home. How horrific is that?
Well, you got a valid point there, because even to make the assumption that a person is a potential mass murderer, they have not yet committed murder. So how can they be punished or charged for an offense that they have not committed yet? So I understand the validity in that. But what I don't understand is people on this government understanding the rights of humans to have access to full life. And there is a group of specific people that are taking innocent lives. Well, then, there should be a system directed at that age range, despite they may want them to vote at the age of 16 or whatever the case may be. It's not to take away their rights for having access to a gun legally. It is about letting them have access to the gun with a managerial system of that gun. Because we know for a psychological fact that young men at the age of up to the age of 25, they're still living on their ego and their mannerism. They got to prove they are tough guys and they have to do this. And, oh man, I'm a guy here now and this is my gun, man. You say anything to me, I'm going to blow your head off.
You know? Way over.
Right. So I'm saying for that specific group,
yeah,
let's manage it with love and care. Let's manage it and say, well, look, you want a gun? Fine. You want to go hunting? Fine. You can do all this. But at the ending of the day, let's take this gun and put it up safe. Because the 25-year-old kid may go out there evening in his community and he and one of his colleagues get in an argument and he run home, pick that gun up. If it's in a safe lock away, he can't have access to it. But he ran back in his home, pull his gun out, go and blow the kid head off. So those
in
are...
Massachusetts, we actually do have mandatory storage. And there's different laws between storage and transportation. But pretty much every gun that's not under your direct control has to either be equipped with a mechanical locking device or in some sort of safe or locked cabinet or something like that. So, but remember, in Newtown, the young man actually murdered his mother to gain access to the gun safe. So, it's every time we think we put a solution in front of it, they find a way around it. And in the article, I reminded people that Timothy McVeigh in Oklahoma years ago never used a gun. And he killed 168 people and wounded another, 600 or something, including children. So, again, even if we address the so-called gun issue, they're going to find other ways. And I'll tell you, I'd never talk about them on air, but there are means that these people could do attacks that just give me nightmares at night.
Yes.
As if the attacks they're doing aren't bad enough. I can envision some pretty nasty ones. So, but that's the problem we face.
That's true. I want to look briefly at assault weapons. The assault weapons should those be off the table completely? You want to buy a gun, it's fine. If you want to, I don't even know the reason for an assault weapon because that's something the military use. Or if you're going hunting for big bears or big game hunting or something like that. Yeah. I understand that. But the mere fact that a young kid is going to have access to an assault weapon or one of those machine guns that you can go out in.
Yeah, see, that's where the fallacy is. None of these are machine guns. What they call assault weapons are not machine guns. They are not military grade guns.
Okay.
The AR-15 and all the other guns that we use and we possess, they're semi-automatic guns. They're no different than any other gun out there. They just look different. The AR, which is the civilian platform, has been in civilian hands since the 1950s. If this gun were a car, it'd be an antique. There is no standing army in the entire world that uses the AR-15 as its firearm. The M16 is the full auto version, or now it's called the M4, which it's a little bit different. But that's the full auto version, and that's the military version. We don't own those. Now, under very special circumstances, you can get a machine gun license if you're an instructor or a collector, but they're very expensive, and the guns are astronomically expensive. So there's no real difference. And one of the things I always, and I had these sitting here just in case, people tell me, while the AR is so powerful, if you can see it, this is the cartridge that the AR-15 fires. Right. It's one of the smallest production cartridges in the world. This is a standing hunting cartridge. It's a 30-06. And it does come in semi-automatic models all over the world.
Right.
There is nothing powerful about the AR-15. It was never designed to be powerful. There's nothing special about it other than it's a semi-automatic gun.
Okay. Well, one of the other things I want to look at, and this is the psychological impact that video games have on kids. I'm not a person who really play video games, and I don't know the type of games they have out there. But I clearly understand that there are all kind of auto-grand theft, this and this gunning down this and this person shooting the other person and all these kind of outrageous games. By a child playing this over a period of years, does that build up the emotional and psychological feeling to go out there and practice this in person? and see what it's really like. Cause this is man nature. Young boys love these things, and they want to experience in reality. Not, in fact, this is a real world now. Kids don't even want a fake phone. As soon as they can talk, they want a real cell phone. This is the real world. This is the real world we're living in. And kids say, no, I want to see what this is like in reality to gun down some people. I go to the
grocery store and I see 6-year-olds texting their friends. And
yeah.
Like, kidding me, really?
Right. So my question is, should there be a mandate on what video games should be like in this country? Eradicating those of gun violence, because I believe it do have a psychological impact on those who play these games and they act it out in reality. Should there be some form of governance when it comes to issuing video games of gun violence to the retail outlets? Should there be a standard?
Well, it's kind of interesting again, where you're kind of veering off my topic, but it is a pet project of mine, not a pet project, a pet peeve of mine. Is a lot of this, and even some of the stuff we were talking about before, and now what you're talking about now, a lot of this can be solved if we could get parents back in the home. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when I say that, right away I get people saying, oh, you're sexist, you just want women back in the home. No. When we were first married, I told my wife if she could make the money, I'd be a stay-at-home dad. I'd raise my daughter, take care of the house, whatever. But because the economy has gotten to the point where, especially the middle class, cannot afford to have one person at home, our children are being raised by others. As a matter of fact, one of the things I said about what we face now between the mass murders and the mental health and everything else, we are actually seeing the first adult generation of children that were raised by someone other than their parents. Literally from months old, you have to give them to somebody else to take care of them so you can go back to work. And how much time do you really get to spend with your kids if you're working full time? And again, I'm not, making anybody feel bad about it. It's the economy we live in. But it has shown enormous effects of how the family is now and how kids are simply not raised. So, I forget what movie line it was, but, the guy said, you're competing against, of course, this is dated a little bit, but, Madonna at MTV and, Netflix and video games. You don't stand a chance because you have minutes with your kid, not all day long.
That's true.
And it's a much bigger issue. It was one of the things I was actually hoping with COVID would happen, is that we could change the economy to put a parent back in the home. And we came close. And I think some people started to see that, and that's why it suddenly ended. But that's just me.
Okay. Well, one of the things I want to ask you, and I want to, because this show airs in the Caribbean also, and where it came from in Barbados, gun violence
why didn't we meet there?
Listen, Jim, I'll tell you, gun violence had exploded enormously. I mean, young people are gunning down each other like crazy.
Yeah.
I can remember they had a song that was sung back there in Barbados years ago. It used to go like this: cowboys, cowboys, cowboys. They play with guns like children play with toys, right? And they're gunning down each other. And it became the Wild West. Now, and these guns are illegal guns, trust me. They're coming in there by boatloads and all kind of stuff. There are always raids going on. Could you give a word of advice to these young men that just probably watching Hollywood and feel it's okay to gun down a person, not knowing that these TV stars get back up and play in the next picture, right? What word of advice would you want to give them?
Well, especially in, God bless us, most of us have not experienced what it's like to live in inner city crime areas. I mean, I grew up poor, but I didn't grow up in the inner city. You know, part of the problem is, and you said it earlier, was they're still trying to prove they're a man.
Yes.
And, you know, and in my eyes, you want to prove you're a man, protect your neighborhood. Walk an elderly woman down to the market and back and make sure she makes it home all okay. Mm-hmm. You know, those are the things that you need to do to prove you're a man. Take care of your family. You know, don't have a family until you're ready to take care of one. You know, there's a lot there. But how do I, and this is a problem that I have personally, how do I, person that looks like me, come into the inner city crime-ridden area and tell them what they should do? Mm-hmm. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. So I may have all the answers in the world, but they're going to look at me and go, what do you know? And to some extent, they're right, even though I grew up literally dirt poor. You know, it's a matter of who's giving them the message. And unfortunately, the wrong message, I think, is constantly driven at them by everything we just talked about.
Yes.
So, and they try to live up to that hype, and that's what either lands them in jail or lands them in a grave.
Yes. Okay. Well, we're about to wrap up. So in these last moments, what would be the legal frame structure? What would be the legal structure you would like to see happen here in Massachusetts from government when it comes to guns as a whole?
Well, first of all, they have to realize that everything they've done for 20 years has been a failure. And the rest of the country is proving that. Massachusetts is one of the most violent states in Northeast America. Mm-hmm. Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont are the safest. They don't have the crime that we have, and it's all by capita. So first of all, they have to admit that what they've done is totally wrong. Mm-hmm. And then they have to actually go after the bad guys. Mm-hmm. But as we started off the show, they have to admit that what they've been doing for mental health just simply isn't working. And we need to start from scratch. In our bill, House 2120 would at least get us started there with setting up a commission to tell us what our needs are in Massachusetts for mental health. And it also sets up what we call the Friends and Family Suicide Hotline. We were horrified back during the red flag debates to find out that Massachusetts didn't have its own suicide hotline. It still relies on the Samaritans, which they're not going to know what services we have here. Right. So that bill is at least a step in the right direction. There's going to be a lot more work after that when it comes to mental health. But they need to absolutely respect the civil rights of their citizens and do the right thing. And the right thing is hard, and that's probably why they don't want to do it.
Okay. Well, on that note, Jim, it's a pleasure having you on again from Gun Owners Action League in Massachusetts. Thank you, and I hope we will look forward to speak again as the months prolong and see what we can come up with in terms of gun violence. Until then, thank you all for tuning in once again on Living in the 21st Century.